Hello and welcome to another one of my F1 chats. My name is Alex, does F1 stuff, and this is number 12, and we will jump straight in to the articles that we are viewing today, and that is that Ricciardo is thinking of a Red Bull return, or is not, ruling it out for 2021, and Toto Wolff has bought some Aston Martin shares. I completely changed up that intro to how I normally do it. To be honest, that kind of flowed a bit better. Maybe I'll stick with that. So looking at our first article, this comes from the Formula One website as usual, and it is that Ricciardo admits he wouldn't rule out a Red Bull return as he looks at his 2021 options. So as the article says, it was kind of the shock of the 2018 summer when he announced that he was leaving Red Bull to sign for Renault, but he has now admitted he would not rule out returning to the team that powered him to 7 Grand Prix victories. The Australian star's contract at Renault expires at the end of this season, as does many other people, and in the past, Mercedes and Ferrari have both been linked with moves for the 30-year-old, but when asked by Sky Sports about a possible return to Red Bull, he did not dismiss the idea. So I think it's kind of sensible that he's not ruling it out, and he's keeping all his doors open, but whether they would be accepting of him coming back, I'm not so sure. And in his own tongue-in-cheek manner, Ricciardo explained why a return to the Milton Keynes-based team could one day happen. Something I've learned growing up in general, just through life, is never say never, and never completely disregard something, unless it was going to prison or something that you'd really not want to go back to. Which, yeah, that's fair enough. You got to try and, when you leave something, you got to try and not make any enemies out of it. I suppose you got to try and keep those good relations so that if what you move on to doesn't quite work out, say his Renault idea, he's gone from a Grand Prix winning car to a car that's not even getting any podiums, and its best result was a 5th or a 4th place last year. So he's definitely moved down the grid in a team respect, but I'm not sure what he will do. So looking further into the article, it says here, Ricciardo's future in Formula One will continue to be one of the sport's most captivating stories, as both Max Verstappen and Charles Leclerc have already inked long-term deals with Red Bull and Ferrari respectively. So I think they're both signed till 2023 or something like that, 2023 and 24 possibly. But we could therefore have a potential driver merry-go-round on our hands, as the likes of Sebastian Vettel, Lewis Hamilton and Valtteri Bottas haven't yet signed their 2021 plans at all for their team. So that could be quite interesting to just watch everyone sort of just move around a little bit. Possibly Bottas could stay, but Hamilton could move, Vettel could retire, then who would fill? Russell might go up to Mercedes, and then Ricciardo fills Vettel's place at Ferrari, or they all just move around in their teams. It'll be quite an interesting thought. And also, Formula One, at the bottom of this article, launched a poll to which I've already voted, and it was, which team will Daniel Ricciardo be driving for in 2021? So 8,320 people had voted at the time I did, and I put my vote in for Renault, as that seems like the most realistic choice. A lot of people have actually voted for Ferrari, which I can see only if Vettel retires. However, I don't think he will at the end of this year, because, like I said in either my previous or the one previous to this F1 chat, that not having this season running as normal has actually helped Vettel a lot, in that if he did underperform again to Leclerc, then it would be more of a reason for him to retire. Whereas now he hasn't raced at all, it would definitely mean that he would want to stay on for one more season. And that's it for our little Ricciardo story. I'll be interested to see what he actually does, but we'll have to wait and see throughout the summer. And we will move straight into our second story, which comes from BBC News. And why has that done that? Why can I never get my animations working properly? Well, for some reason, my headline has just completely disappeared. It doesn't seem to exist, but the headline on BBC News said Toto Wolff buys Mercedes, or Toto Wolff, Mercedes Formula One boss buys stake in Aston Martin. Basically that top line in bold. I probably should have just started with that, shouldn't I? So obviously Aston Martin has now been bought out by Lance Stroll, Big Daddy Stroll, and he now owns Racing Point as well, which will be rebranded as Aston Martin in 2021. So Wolf has bought a stake just under 5%, which will become 0.95% after a rights issue in Aston Martin on Monday. So a Mercedes spokesperson said that the move did not affect Wolf's role as an executive and shareholder at Mercedes F1. He said the purchase was a financial investment. Stroll's takeover of Aston Martin was approved by shareholders earlier this month. He became the executive chairman after investing $260 million of new capital. Wolf has already bought nearly 14.5 million shares. The current market price of Aston Martin shares is 55 pence, giving him a shareholding worth 7.975 million at today's prices. Wolf owns 30% of the Mercedes team and is in negotiations with Ola Kalanesmith, chairman of the parent company Daimler, about an extension of his contract beyond the end of this year. It also says that Daimler is a shareholder in Aston Martin, having taken a 5% share in 2013. So there is going to be no conflict of interest at all, as the parent company, which owns Mercedes as a whole, owns a bit of Aston Martin. So you can't really say, oh, they're going to merge, or Wolf is going to be the team boss of Aston Martin, because Daimler already own some of Aston Martin. Wolf is quite happy where he is with Mercedes. And of course, the next bit of the article actually goes on to say about the conflict of interest as it sits along its own in that top little paragraph there. So the Mercedes F1 team have also have engine and gearbox supply and technical cooperation agreements with Racing Point. So obviously they supply their engine, supply the gearbox, and they use their wind tunnel as well. The investment has been approved by the relevant compliance bodies within Daimler. Despite Daimler's position, the move will inevitably raise questions among other F1 teams, some of whom are uncomfortable about the apparent closeness of Mercedes and Racing Point, and of Wolf and Stroll as personal friends. A number of other teams regard Racing Point as an effective Mercedes B team, and many were angered when they saw similarity between this year's Racing Point and last year's Mercedes. All I say to that is, yes, it looks like a B team, but equally there is already an official B team on the grid within Red Bull and AlphaTauri. That's already established, so it's nothing new. Equally, Ferrari and Haas, and Ferrari and Alfa Romeo. So there's nothing new at all. I mean, you can even go as far to say it's Mercedes, Racing Point, Williams, Ferrari, Haas, Alfa Romeo, Red Bull, AlphaTauri, and then Renault just sits on its own. You can split it up into those three majority groups. That's just kind of how the sport works at the moment. It's a bit of a strange one. But that is actually all of the news. There wasn't too much really coming out. There were a couple feature articles, but when I was editing the last chat, it just didn't, I don't know, it didn't quite sit well with me. It didn't work out exactly how I wanted, so I chose not to include them, and I found a couple more articles and more news rather than just here's what someone does in their life or here's what happens with this. I feel like news needs to be a bigger talking point. Anyway, I hope you all enjoyed that video though. It hopefully should be a nice little quick one, and I will catch you guys in the next one, whatever I decide to make. See you next time.